Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. So today there's been a lot of talk. The Nintendo 64 Mini. A lot of people have been saying the titles have been leaked. I'm 100% sure the Nintendo 64 Mini is coming out. No doubt about that. Faux show. But there's been a lot of talk on forums, videos, Facebook groups, stuff like that, saying, hey, the list has been leaked. So if you go to this website, I'll put a link in the description so you can peep it out yourself. Now, I'm not 100% sure. People have been saying that this list has been up for a few months, and it's not 100% as to what it's for. Some people are like, no, these are just manuals for the Wii U and stuff like that. I don't see exactly where it says Wii U. It just says support for Nintendo 64. And this list, if we go through it, you're going to see this makes sense. This does make sense to me because you don't have anything that you wouldn't imagine wouldn't be on the Nintendo 64 Classic Edition, and it's mostly first-party titles. So the number of games, I believe there's 19 here, is what we pretty much thought, a lot of us thought would be on the system as far as the numbers go. Now there's still going to be debate. You know, this list, I'm 90% sure that these are the games that are going to be on there. This is on an official Nintendo website. The number of games, yeah, they could just be for the Virtual Console, maybe for the Nintendo Switch or the Wii U or whatever, but there's really no indication of that other than, you know, down here is just part of the general you know, web page as far as Nintendo Direct, eShop, Miiverse, Nintendo Extra, Nintendo Kids Club, just different sections. This just lists Nintendo 64 game manuals. For what reason? For the Wii U eShop? For possible Nintendo Switch eShop? I don't know. But the number of games that are listed here does seem like it would be what we could expect on the Nintendo 64. So just going through the list real quick, we have 1080 Snowboarding, definite good game. Bomberman 64, pretty good. Donkey Kong 64, Excite Bike 64. I forgot there was an Excite Bike 64. It's an okay game. F-Zero X, awesome game. Kirby 64, Mario Golf, Mario Kart 64, Mario Party 2, Mario Tennis, Paper Mario, Pokemon Snap, Sin and Punishment, Star Fox 64, Super Mario 64, both of the Legend of Zeldas, Majora's Mask and Ocarina of Time, Wave Race 64, oh man, I love Wave Race, and Yoshi's Story. Yoshi's Story, kids game, really easy, but I could see why it would be on there. So why are people thinking this is the list? Because it kind of popped out of nowhere, and it's a number that a lot of us think will be on the system. Now, a lot of people are going to be like, well, I don't see GoldenEye, I don't see, you know, other rare titles. Well, because Nintendo doesn't have the rights to most of the rare titles. Nintendo, even though, you know, there are rare titles that are on here, I believe, well, maybe just Donkey Kong, not 100%, I'd have to double check. But with rare, Nintendo owns the rights to anything that's Donkey Kong related. So they're not going to have GoldenEye, they're not going to have Blast Core, certain things like that, Banjo-Kazooie, stuff like that, because they're not Nintendo-owned games or characters. Just because Rare developed a game, such as like Donkey Kong 64, doesn't mean that Nintendo doesn't own it. If it was licensed by Nintendo and partnered with Rare, you know, Rare and Nintendo were, you know, pretty deep partners back in the day. So Rare did a lot of work for Nintendo, and Nintendo maintained and owned the rights to those games. Now, do they still have to strike a deal with Rare? I'm not 100% on that. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But, you know, with Rare being owned by Microsoft, we have no possibility of getting those Rare titles on here unless Microsoft says it's okay. And it's unfortunate, but it is what it is. And a lot of people are going to say this list sucks. I don't see how it sucks. I'm seeing a pretty solid list of games here. Games that I've been very excited. These are hitting all the classics. other than, you know, a handful of unknowns or rare games that we don't really have much hope for anyway. So I really do think this may be the list. I mean, there could be some surprises. We've seen some little snippets in the past, a little trademarking of the classic logo for the Nintendo 64 and stuff like that. And I do think it is highly likely, 99% positive, that the next Classic Edition system is going to be a Nintendo 64. And this right here, not, you know, this isn't 100% proof right here. This is not available on any other Nintendo website at the moment that I have seen. But this is a good indication of games that I would immediately think Nintendo would pick to be on here, because most of them are first party, so there's no dealing with licensing and whatnot. And you're hitting all the classic Nintendo games that were available on the Nintendo 64. A lot of people love the Nintendo 64, a lot of people hate it. It didn't do as great as it should have back in the day because it lost a lot of third-party support due to using physical media and cartridges and the Nintendo tax and all that, and everybody else, you know, going to disc-based systems and it being cheaper to produce and there's more profits. So Nintendo lost a lot of third-party support. So what did we have on the Nintendo 64? A lot of solid first-party games, and I think this is a great list if this is going to be what we get. And like I said, you can't please everyone. There's still games on here that I'm like, man, I wish we had this instead of this, but I would be extremely happy if they dropped the Nintendo 64 Classic Edition and these were the games that were on there. Price point, I don't know. You know, our Super Nintendo went up. It went up, you know, what, to $80 versus, I believe the NES Classic was, what, 60 in the US? So it went to 80 for the Super Nintendo. Is the Nintendo 64 going to go up to 100? It's possible. Will people pay that? Hell yes, they would. And you know, will it be hard to get, just like the Nintendo Classic and, you know, the Super Nintendo Classic to a little lesser degree? Super Nintendo Classic has still been popping up, you know, here and there for people to grab, but it's still being scalped and grabbed. So Nintendo 64 would be the same thing regardless of price. But then we have the concern and the issue, you know, if they're going to do full-size controllers, you know, you could easily slip in a box that's the same size as the NES and Super Nintendo Classic Editions. You could slip in Nintendo and Super Nintendo controllers because the form factor was smaller and they were slimmer. A Nintendo 64 controller, not so much. So would we expect to get two? I know we would at least get one, but would we get two? Now, if they give us two, they're going to have to side sell additional controllers because there are 4-player games on here. Mario Kart 64, Mario Party. You know, I'm sure there's a handful of others as well. But to cater to those, of course, Mario Kart. Mario Kart was, you know, excuse my language, the shit back in the day for 4-player, you know, competitive greatness, you know, sitting in your living room or hanging out at a buddy's house, having friends over and just going crazy. So you either include 1 or 2 controllers, and that's going to increase the price. It's going to be at least $100, I would imagine. And then to side sell extra controllers, oh my God, the controllers are going to be scalped just like the NES Classic controllers. And then the concern and the issue with that as well is there'll be a bunch of third-party controllers, but third-party Nintendo 64 controllers are a little harder to pull off, and I have not experienced any third-party N64 stuff as, you know, any time that I felt was awesome. I know there are a few out there that are pricey, but if third parties make controllers for the Nintendo 64 Classic Edition, I hope they're not crap, because I know people are going to want to have 4 controllers for the system, and I highly doubt Nintendo's going to produce a system with 4 controllers. It's of course going to have the ability, I know they're going to have 4 ports on it, they're going to have to, but they're not going to supply us with 4 controllers, either 1 or 2, and it's going to be hell to get a controller. If they sell a controller, Nintendo 64 style controller, what are they going to charge for it? 20, 30 bucks? And then all the scalpers are going to get their hands on them and they're going to be like 120, 140. You're going to be paying more for a controller than you do for the system if you're lucky enough to get one. So I don't know, man. I love the Nintendo 64. I love most of the games that are on this list, and I'm very hopeful. like I said, this is just kind of, you know, information that people have been talking about today, you know, leaked lists and whatnot, and I'm feeling it. I'm just not 100%. I think this is pretty solid right here because it makes sense when you just start dissecting what's included and what's not included. What we hope or wish was on there, that we know in our brains, if we know the way things work, we understand why it's not on there, and we can understand why it's mostly first-party titles, because that's all you got on the Nintendo 64. Mostly was 99% of the solid games for the Nintendo 64 were first-party titles. So this list really makes sense, because what are we looking at? Non-first party, we have what, 2 games? Sin and Punishment and Bomberman. Those are the only 2 non-first party games that I'm seeing on here, unless I'm mistaken. You know, I'm sure somebody will correct me in the comments, but that's what I'm seeing. Everything on here is first party. So what do you guys think? Is this indicative of the Nintendo 64 Classic Edition coming? I don't care what anybody tells me. I'm not 100% with this list, as if that's solid proof, but deep down in my heart, I feel and I know the Nintendo 64 Classic Edition will be gracing our Christmas trees or whatever you celebrate next year. I'm 100%. 100%. I just know it. Sometimes I might be 99%, but I'm 100% right here. In my brain, I'm 99%. My heart, 100%. What do you guys think? Smash that like button. Throw out a comment out there. I check out the comments. I want to see what you guys got to say. Positive, negative. Is this just a bunch of nonsense? Do you believe it? Not believe it? You think the Game Boy Classic is coming first? I don't think so, but I know a lot of you guys do. Throw that out there. And with that said, guys, I will catch y'all next time. Boom!